Yeah, I have a small addiction to scuba diving that keeps me here, and would want my lifelong dream to make that happen. But I think I'll have to wait till my retirement kicks in before that happens. So thank you for having me, and I appreciate the IMA asking me to come back and speak. I'm going to be real quick. But I wanted to put on everybody's radar the topic of information governance. There's a lot of opportunities for digital marketers specifically to be heroes to your IT and legal department. Just as a quick show of hands, can I see how many of you in your day-to-day, your digital marketing efforts, are you dealing with, I'm going to start small, gigabytes of data, trying to manage that? That's everybody. Good. Anybody in the terabyte world? Good, still about 20% of you. Anybody working in the petabyte world? Still a lot of people. Okay, great. What if you could tell your CIO that you could save, for the petabyte people in the world, what if you could tell your CIOs that you could save them $1 million a month in costs and better management? Or in the people in the terabyte world, what if you could say $1 million a year? The gigabyte world, you're still okay. You can pretty much, you can skip over this, you're okay. But the topic of information governance is important. And as digital marketers, I love you guys, but you're one of the biggest offenders. And so we want to apply more discipline and think about this from the data and the assets that you're creating on your company's internet, because it's not just a storage cost perspective, it's also a legal risk perspective. Again, I do fraud investigations. So when companies get sued, oftentimes the regulators are going in and saying, all right, 3 years ago, what did you have on your website? What did you say? What was on there? Because that's what you were telling the market. That's the piece of evidence that I want. And you have to be able to call that up or reclass that and be able to produce that information. And that's a liability if you have it. Get rid of this stuff. And if you look at this life cycle where you have the business use case of your digital content, but after a while it gets old and you need to archive it and ultimately dispose of it. And again, I'm going to be real quick here because again, this isn't cutting edge leading analytics or marketing stuff, but it's important content for you to think about so that you can, A, stay off the legal and the IT's bad list, but also add value and drive real cost to your companies. I'm going to introduce you to this concept. We call it CROT. It's kind of a harsh name, but it's a good acronym to remember, specifically the ROT part. As you go through your digital assets and your content, obviously, you want to identify critical information. And by the way, your Chief Information Security Officer will love you if you keep this in mind, because they're worried about protecting the critical information. And again, that's where a lot of the information security, access control things need to be talked about. But what about probably 80% or more of the redundant, outdated, or trivial data? What are you doing about that? Is it a liability? Is it costing you money? It can be a very big challenge for companies, especially those dealing with hundreds of terabytes, if not petabytes of information. And if you think about it from a cost perspective, look at this. 10 petabytes of data could be spending as much as $35 million. Or in 500 terabytes is about $1.7 million a year just to store. That's not the legal risk. And so again, my ask for you is to think about your organizations, even in small businesses. Look at, again, just a simple cost of the storage of this. We all think storage is cheap and infinite, right? Well, not so much when it's in an enterprise being maintained. Yes, it's going to continue to get cheaper, but there's still a cost to manage and organize and maintain that type of data. And it's a business liability, so get rid of it. That's kind of my main theme here I want you to take back and think about. Here's an example where a company is saving $45,000, almost $50,000 a month just by having better discipline and controls around the data that they're creating and maintaining and being able to get rid of. So, I mean, this is important stuff. And when you're in the terabyte world, and certainly in the petabyte world, you definitely need to be thinking about information governance. How do you do it? I'm going to give you this framework and then I'll conclude. There's 7 key steps. Know what you have, know where it is, know who can and have access to it, know how it's protected, document this stuff, know how to respond to external events, keep it for as long as you need, and dispose of everything else. That's kind of the framework. Pretty simple, straightforward. Now again, digital marketers, this is not your role to make sure that this policy is in place. This is more of your legal role, your CISO's role, your CIO and CTO's role. But I think they'll think you're a hero if you can help them drive it, because you guys are one of the biggest creators of the content that takes up this space. So again, I wanted to give you that framework, something to think about, and appreciate your time. So with that, Sinan, I'll turn it over to you.